We go, our friends. Data Day Wednesday. Big thing on Data Day today. Where are we talking with a 33% year over year increase? Let's get into it. Oh, you know what I did there? You see what I did there? I totally closed the video clips. To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly. You know what that felt like? That kind of felt like, when you're in high school and you're like, yeah, and you're kind of strutting and you trip. Has it ever happened to you guys? Because it's happened to me. That kind of felt
look
like.
Look at Lisa. Like, she wasn't playing around this morning.
She's got two. Around. She's double linked in the good mornings. Where you're like, when you kind of say something and I was like 33% increase. What a great hook. and I'm like, why is the video not playing? All right. So what do we got? We got Damon. Good morning, Damon. We got Greg. The Lisa just had to take a break. Way too much coffee. Nice. Morning from Newark Airport. Way to go, Jeff. On the road and listening to us. Now, Jeff, where are you on your way to, brother? Talk to us. So, my man, Dean, have we got some stuff to talk about today, brother? We hinted towards this when you and I were talking months ago about bed sheets. And we had this conversation about this is going to happen. It's only a matter of time. And I don't want to give it away. So I'll let you take it away, Dean, because it's funny how we're really starting to see now that the show's been going like weekly. And remember when we first sat down and Dean said, hey guys, why don't we do like a weekly data thing where we can actually follow the data and it's not kind of sporadic. And when you follow the data, DJ, you see all of these things starting to unfold and open up and get visual. Yep. And it's exactly what's happening. And it's pretty cool to see it happening in real time.
It's amazing to see what's happened in the last 18 months sort of transpire. And I've just realized I'm sitting here with my iPhone earphones in, and I'm not even dialed into this session on my iPhone.
So we're both adding 1,000 this morning with all our technical.
That's okay. Dean's so excited about this. I know.
So on the show, we've been talking a lot about this, the port congestion in Los Angeles and the shift in volumes away from any port not named Los Angeles and Long Beach. And importers are struggling to find, capacity on the ocean. We've been seeing a lot of truckload volume in port markets where some of these volumes are being diverted. But then go back even further to the start of the pandemic. As everybody stayed home, we started ordering stuff for our homes. So we started ordering furniture, desks, chairs, computers, all those sorts of things. Well, the furniture is generally about 12 to 15% of total containers that come into the US. Like about 12 to 15% of every loaded container. So it started on Sunday morning, right? So I was a little bit behind. I was about a week behind because of the Mid-America Truck Show and my data analytics. But I noticed that our truckload volumes were skyrocketing in the Houston port market. And I thought, I wonder if this is related to the diversion of imports from Asia away from Los Angeles into the Port of Houston, because we've been reporting for probably the best part of 18 months now that the Port of Houston's been, putting in more ship-to-shore cranes that can, the bigger ones that can handle the biggest ships up around 12,500 TEUs, which is about the max size you can run through the Panama Canal. They're called Neo-Panamax vessels. They've been widening the harbour, been putting a lot of effort into building more infrastructure to handle bigger ships. Most of the East Coast ports have been doing that. So I had a look at the data on Sunday to try and find out why our truckload volumes were up so much. So the stat today, like the number of the day is amazing. Houston became our biggest truckload market in terms of load post volumes on the spot market. Normally it's Los Angeles, Ontario, Atlanta, Chicago. They are a distant second, third, fourth, and fifth to Houston, where truckload volumes are up substantially in the last little while. So here's the stats, guys, on the imports. And if you could just show up that first chart, Dan, this is what got my attention. So you know that spot rates were down another 4 to 5 cents per mile this week. They're down about 45 cents per mile in the last year. So as I was looking at some of these lanes, like this is Houston, Port of Houston, all the way back to Ontario, just outside of Los Angeles. So say to yourself, why, if rates are declining nationally, why are rates going up on this lane? And this is the point I'm trying to make here, is that the data tells you a much bigger story sort of behind the scenes, because this is sort of the end result of what's been happening. So why would, who's sending freight from Houston all the way back to Ontario? Well, it turns out a lot of this volume are loads of freight that have come from Asia through the Panama Canal into Houston, and then being trucked or trained all the way back to the West Coast just to avoid the West Coast port congestion.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter what lane you look at out of Houston, whether it's Atlanta, Chicago, you see a similar trend. So this is what I sort of come across on Sunday morning, and I thought, well, I wonder if the data bears that out in terms of what we're seeing. And what we've seen in the Peers database, so Peers is part of IHS Markit, sister company of JOC, Journal of Commerce. So the Gulf Coast Port of Houston, February import volumes were up 37% year over year. So they had 37% more containers in February this year compared to last year. Wow. Furniture is the number one import nationally. Those volumes were up 9% year over year. So we're bringing in 9% more container loads of furniture. But in Houston, it's up 17%, not quite double, but the rate of change in Houston has been about double. Most of these shipments come from mainland China into Houston. So total import volumes from China to Houston are up 39% year over year. Right. So what this does, this is the same thing that happened in Los Angeles as all the imports hit Los Angeles. What happened is it overwhelmed the intermodal and the truckload, contract market. A lot of that volume spilled over to the spot market. So in Houston alone, volumes on the truckload side have jumped. This is load post volumes on our load boards are up 27% in the last month. They're up 4% last week. So this is sort of a data point that I just found fascinating. If we could go through some of the other lanes if you like, but this is one of those, if you're sort of selling capacity, this is one of those lanes where even to Phoenix, right? You can see that Phoenix rates are up, probably averaging, let's call it $1.50. They're up to, I think that says $1.80 there, Dan. So
yeah, $1.80 plus then 65 cents fuel kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can see that, and normally rates heading back to the West Coast are much lower than coming from the West Coast east. There's a big imbalance in rates because there's less volume going back. But on this particular lane, if you were working with your customers on this lane and you were finding it hard to, book capacity, what you'd want to be watching, a bit like we've said on other shows, one of the important data points to watch is the weather. Well, in this case, one of the big important data points that I watch is the volume of imports. And of course, Dan, DJ, we've talked about this on the show a lot, and that is that there is a definite shift in import volume away from the West Coast to East Coast. Seattle in particular, Prince Rupert up in British Columbia for the cross-country run to Chicago. But you're seeing a lot more import volumes coming into the US in ports, non-traditional ports. And I think that's a story that we've been talking to truckload carriers about for quite a while now, which is you're going to continue to see import volumes of containers at non-traditional ports where there's going to be less capacity because carriers aren't necessarily picking up on it quickly. And you're finding your shipper customers are trying to get capacity to get the freight moving, and they're having to pay a premium to get trucks into those markets because they're not ports that are on a lot of people's radar. Charleston was a port last year. We predicted 12 months ago that you'd start to see incredible truckload volumes in Charleston because they'd just built a new 1,000-foot dock. They'd put in a bunch of new ship-to-shore cranes. And of course, fast forward to today, they've got massive congestion problem from all of the big ships trying to unload higher volumes of freight, and that's spilling over into the spot market. So the overall story here is with the data, we're seeing a trend where there's a move away from imports to the West Coast, and they're coming around through the Panama Canal to the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. They're all markets where you probably continue to see tight capacity on a lot of lanes out of these port markets where you're seeing surging year-over-year volumes, even though overall import volumes were down in February. So
Now, Dean, when we look at something like this, which is
yep,
outbound load post out of the Houston area,
yep,
are you? So, I guess my first question is: are corporations doing this, going through the Panama Canal and going into Houston for time savings,
yeah,
cost savings, a bit of both? Like, and
yeah,
I can only speak from past
yep,
experience. Now, it was at the point where there was like 100 and something ships off the coast of
right,
of of,
yep,
of California.
yep,
But what we found was bringing a ship all the way down and actually coming into Savannah,
yep,
believe it or not, like Georgia, not
yep,
even Texas, up to Georgia to
yep,
deliver down to Miami,
yep,
was actually almost 3 weeks faster than coming
yeah,
out of LA.
yeah. So this is exactly what's happening, Dan. And remember that a lot of the big ships that come into Los Angeles that just run back and forth across the Trans-Pacific trade lane, a lot of those are much bigger. Well, I won't say a lot. That's sort of too much of a general term. But the big, massive vessels like the Ever Given, those ones that are sort of in those mega vessels that are up around 20,000 containers, they can't fit through the Panama Canal. They can fit through the Suez Canal. So you'll see a lot of those leave Asia and head west up through the Panama Canal, through the Mediterranean, and straight across to the US East Coast. But there's another raft of vessels that are smaller. They can go to the East Coast. They can come around through the Panama Canal. I think the max through the Panama Canal is 12,500 containers. That's sort of a rough estimate of the size of the vessels. So what it's telling you is, Dan, that it's quicker and cheaper to deliver the container to Houston, pay $1.80 a mile on a truck, and get it back to the Ontario freight market, which is it's bizarre when you think about it, but that's the magnitude
Really
of the
bizarre.
yeah. So, I mean, the math would work out, Dan, DJ, that says that if I'm going to spend a couple of weeks with my container tied up offshore waiting to find a slot, I'm probably better in terms of the delayed cost and the impact on my customers. It's working out cheaper to run that freight around to Houston and then back to the West Coast, which is again totally counterintuitive, but that's what's happening right now.
So the one we're looking at, the outbound load post map, we're
Yep.
talking 15,317 loads from Houston to Phoenix, Arizona last week that got
Yeah.
posted.
Just in the week. So this is where the brokers and 3PLs are posting loads on our load boards. They're trying to get they're trying to book capacity on those loads. And then, of course, the next chart I think you've got one there on the rate side of things that shows what the rates are doing on those particular lanes.
Yeah,
But you can
this is
see,
the rate. So we've
yeah.
got
So this is
April 2nd, a few different colors going on
yeah.
here, but go on.
So the bottom left chart shows you how rate per mile has been sliding down as it has been nationally. So no surprise there that rates are sort of coming down over the course of March into early April. But the colours are kind of interesting. The blue lines to the left and to the north tell you that the rates are down sequentially, down week over week. But the gold coloured bars are where rates are up on those lanes. And generally, you can see the split, along the Mississippi River. Anything to the east of that, you're going to pay higher rates, and anything to the left, because there's less volumes moving west, there's more volumes heading east. So there's more impact on the capacity side, which has pushed rates up on some of those lanes.
So if
So
we look
again,
at these numbers, Dean, just
yep,
so the March 12th area, this one at the bottom, the main line
yep,
at the left on the bottom, we're
yep,
talking 244 a mile. Then the
yep,
next week it dropped to 230. So we're like
yep, yep,
down almost 15 cents a mile.
yep,
Then we're down again, or 238. Then we're down again to
yep,
236.
right,
And now we're down to 234. So if you just
right,
look at that scale from
yeah,
March 12th to April 2nd, we're
right,
talking like,
yep,
20 days, 22
yep,
days.
yep.
That's a huge drop in numbers. Huge
Yeah,
drop
and
in
it's
numbers.
and
Yeah.
and sort of I've always had a saying that no one's home at the average, right? So these are the average rates, and when you peel back the covers a bit and you have a look at the rates that make up the average, because there's a lot of individual lanes. There's tens of thousands of lanes we look at every week that go into the average. Then you see that there's higher rates on some lanes. So I think it was 180 to so what's that? 234 is the average for the entire market. On some lanes, it's only $1.80 to the west, and I think I've got Atlanta here. If I could quickly type in Atlanta, it's 234 as a national average. Atlanta, Georgia today to the east is 7-day rate is 293. Sorry,
So it went from 230 to 290.
Yeah. So
because that's what's going to happen as more capacity is needed in the Houston area. Rates are going to skyrocket, and on the flip side, anyone going to Houston now rates are going to drop.
Yeah, and it depends on the balance of freight too, right? So typically, if there's less freight in the market, you have higher rates going into those markets. But this is a lane out of Houston back to the West Coast where the impact on spot rates would tell you that there's not a lot of capacity that's been dedicated to running on that lane. Capacity will come into the market once carriers start to find out that there's a lot more volume, and they hear through the network that the intermediaries are looking to find more capacity because there's more port volume. But I think Jeff's right in the comments. We're going to see a lot more of this import volume, and I think for the broader message that we've been pitching is that disruption is going to be, volatility is going to be a key word in a lot of these markets. That the seasonal patterns that you typically see around shipping are probably not going to be here still for at least the rest of this year, while ever there's such volatility at the port levels. Remember, we used to typically say, the peak in intermodal rail shipping is about September. Mm-hmm. And the general theme was if your freight isn't in the warehouses by October, it might make it to the shelves for Christmas. Well, or holiday season to be, correct. Last year, importers started pulling forward volume in June. We're already seeing importers pull forward volume now for fall and holiday season inventories. So I think from the truckload, looking to talk to your customers about capacity, the seasonal patterns that you typically rely on might not be as reliable because things are still changing. There's still a lot of volatility. You've still got, COVID lockdowns in China's biggest city. You've got the big ocean carriers blanking sailings. They're parking their ships and not running them because they've got delays on the Asia end. So that'll cause more ups and downs or volatility in the market as opposed to this sort of steady flow of volume that we could bank on each year, peaking in October, November, and then falling away. It's going to be very different this year for anybody working in port markets.
So again, it's going to be companies that are importing products are going to, again, be looking for additional warehouse space. They're going to be spending more money to hold their products longer. Right. They're going to be bringing out, if they have if we go into like the fashion area or the clothing area, their fall clothing is going to be here at the beginning of the summer. So they have it in stock or make sure they have it in stock for the fall kind of thing. Yeah. Is that what we're expecting?
Yeah, inventory levels are rising. That's one from the Institute of Supply Management Purchasing Managers Index data that came out last week. Activity, sort of was down a little bit, but the takeaway that I had was that inventories were rising, which of course fits with the general theme of people rebuilding their depleted inventories. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll go on this year. I think there are still supply chain shortages at an individual market level, and even right down to things like shortages of garage doors that are impacting the certification of homes.
I've got a buddy that's high up at a paint company, and they're having a hell of a time getting dyes for their paints in their automotive sector, which means that he's predicting now, unless something changes, he's predicting because they serve a lot of the automotive network, and so he's expecting them to start canceling colors this year if something doesn't change. So something as simple as that, where it's just a dye for the paint that's causing huge issues, and they're trying to source in other places, but they're saying like it's possible we might have to cancel this color for some of the major automotive brands. So, what's that going to do?
Yeah, more disruptions, and that flows on to the more equipment side. People still are having trouble getting new trucks out of factories. They're not even talking about getting new orders in this year, delivered this year. They're talking about maybe next year if you order something now. The backlog's minimum 12 months. According to our friends at ACT Research, it's a little bit longer. So getting
and
equipment.
The cost has gone up huge.
Right, and trailers. So getting trailers, getting parts, air filters, right down to air filters, things like that are in, high demand. So I think the thing that's, even though the pandemic feels like it's over from a health perspective, although having said that, we've now got another wave coming at us. So we're not out of the woods yet, and by any stretch on that. But it feels like we're at the Transportation Intermediaries Association TAA conference here in San Diego. We just had the Mid America Truck Show, so there is a sense that we're returning to normalcy from a activities perspective. But of course, on the flip side, we've got really high inflation, and that's starting to decrease consumer spending. And so if you're thinking about where does the market go from here, it's really difficult to make any sort of informed judgment, at least I think, because there's too many things that are changing. And
well, I mean, if we look at what we talked about when we were talking about furnitures, plastics, playground equipment, miscellaneous, I mean, a lot of these things have risen this year. So the purchasing dynamics are different as well, included in that, right? Can you address that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I heard last year from a guy called Dean Stinson on Odd Lots podcast, and he said high prices cure high prices. And this was a time when lumber futures were up around $1,500. And of course, he was exactly right. Lumber futures came right back down really quickly because high prices started to slow down on the spending side. And that's what looks like happening now. I don't know how you feel about it as individual consumers, but high inflation is starting to have an effect on where we shop, what we buy. So it looks like we're heading for a decrease in demand, which I think it's already happening, right? We're seeing demand decrease for truckload capacity, and we're seeing truckload capacity increase as measured by the plummeting spot rates. But also when we talk to shippers, first tender acceptances are back up to where they would be at pre-pandemic levels. So the loads being tendered through the TMS systems on the contract side of the market, not spot market. This is the first, as it hits the top of the routing guide, they're being accepted more and more as opposed to being rejected more and more because they didn't have the trucks. So we're seeing a lot more, the routing guides are sort of being repaired. If you talk to shippers on the other side in our network, they're saying that we're starting to see spot rates decrease, and even now contract rates are starting to plateau and start to trend down. And this is where I think it's been interesting to be in the intermediary side of the business. We're seeing carriers in the spot market start to undercut each other, right, which becomes a race to the bottom. Yep. And then, but they're also hearing carriers, and I'd love to hear from is it Daman?
Damon's on. Yeah.
I'd love to hear from him, but we're seeing that some shippers are now, or carriers are coming in saying we'd like to renegotiate our contracts with you, but renegotiate down. Which that's anecdotal. It was actually reported in the Journal of Commerce over the last week. So that when that starts, that tells me that the market has softened dramatically, and there's downward pressure on spot rates. We're seeing a little bit more decrease in spot rates on our ratecast forecast. There's probably another 8 cents to drop in on the dry van side before it plateaus and starts to increase through Independence Day, when rates typically peak around produce seasons, peak in volume. Yeah, this shows.
This is the spot rate, right? Is this the one the Houston to Phoenix one?
Yeah, this is the blue is the contract rate, right? So you can see how contract rates have gone up from $1.90 to $2.32 on that lane. And then you can see the inflection point there in February when spot rates took off, because that tells you when the big import volume started to overwhelm the freight market, and the intermediaries were looking for any sort of capacity, and the spot market rates went up because capacity was very, very tight. But you can see that overall trend, right, which is up from $1.90 to $2.32. That's up like 42 cents a mile in the last year. That's just contract rates. I mean, remember, the contract market represents somewhere between 80 to 85% of all loads moved.
And then this one, we've got the Ontario market now.
Yeah,
so we went from Phoenix
trend
to Ontario. So you see the trend of both dedicated and spot market rising quicker than we would to Phoenix.
Yeah. But you can see, Dan, when the volume of imports hit in February in particular, you could see the impact on the spot market and the contract market. I could see
you saw that drastic climb in February to March.
Yeah, Damon's
169 to 219.
Yeah, Daman just responded as well.
Yeah.
Damon just responded. Let's get this down and let's get. Geez, there's a lot of buttons. Yes, Dean. Every time the market gets soft, we are seeing carriers starting to readjust rates, even in Canada, especially on the cross-border freight. 100%.
Right.
Right.
Thanks, Damon. That's great feedback.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine who bought got a truck. He purchased a truck at the start of the pandemic, and he's been running on the, pretty much on the spot market on our load boards. And he said up until diesel started to skyrocket in February, he said, I've been averaging about $4 a mile. So I texted him this week and I said, how's it looking now? He said, it's grim. It's really grim. And I'm getting brokers hang up on me if I ask for $100 more. So we're back to,
really?
Yeah.
See,
So
Dean, this is what drives me friggin' nuts. This is oh no, I'm gonna just this is crazy. Like
terrible.
When things are flipped, this is where all the friction in this world of logistics and supply chain comes in. Be a partner with your carriers. All you brokers out there that are trying to friggin' steal a dime here and there. Screw you. I'm sorry. Screw you. You know what? Start developing these relationships. This is brutal because you know what? When the tide turns and you have to pay so much, you bitch and complain and then. You know what? It's a two-way street. And this is where relationships take over. All of you that are trying to wheel and deal and get an extra $50, pay people what the job is worth and get it done properly. And you know what? Stop making massive margins, give some of it up and deal with it for long term. When you people that think short term ruin it for everyone else in this industry.
Right. What's the race?
Boy, did I just take off there? I'm just that just makes me livid when they say they're going to hang up on them for $100. Are you crazy? This person's going to pick up and deliver your freight, get your product to market, make you look good, and for $100 you're going to come on, get the fuck out of here.
Where do we end up? Right. So it's a race to the bottom for these guys that work in the spot market because they'll either go out of business because it's not sustainable. They will park their trailer and go and tow a trailer for a larger contract carrier, a larger fleet. There'll be bankruptcies like we saw in 2019 because the cost of running a truck is up at least 50 cents a mile with diesel prices having gone up so much in the last little while. Operating costs of a truck were up 20 cents a mile in the last year in 2021 alone, according to Todd Amon at ATBS. When you add in the impact on diesel prices and spot rates dropping, carrier profitability has gone through the floor. And of course, if you start this undercutting problem and start driving down the market, eventually that capacity goes out of the market and then the market turns and rates come back up again. And then lo and behold, we're back to where we were. It's hard to find trucks again. So relationships are really, really important things to be developing, even in times like this.
And if you're a shipper out there, I'm going to tell you this right now. Tell your freight broker you want a cost plus model. You want to see the invoices and you want them to stop friggin' squeezing these suppliers that get your product to market, because every time somebody squeezes and every time somebody undercuts just to think they're making money, because they're not, right? We saw that in 2019, Dean. We talked about this. Yes. We've talked about it for months now about when diesel goes above that 25% mark. Now, all of a sudden, all these media outlets are saying, oh my gosh, carriers are going to go to business. Hello, we've been saying that for 2 months.
Right.
Pay attention to the data, and just shippers, do it. Tell your suppliers, tell your brokers you want cost plus and you want to pay a fair rate. Because you know what? I think everybody has a hand in this, Dean. Right. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just bitching at brokers. There's asset-based carriers out there. When the tide turns, they jack prices up because they can, and brokers do. But unless somebody puts their foot down and says, we are going to stop this back and forth bullshit, it's always going to continue.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Why do we do it to each other? We all come to work every day trying to put food on the table for our family.
Right.
Let's do it ethically, honestly, and with integrity.
Yep. Dan, Daman has a great comment there, and this is where you think about your trucking company. If you're an asset provider as more of a logistics company, you just happen to own some trucks, because what you're providing are customer solutions. And I did this in Australia with Lane's Biscuits, where they wanted to reduce the cents per kilo of biscuits hauled. And we said to do that, we need to run our B doubles, our B trains about 3,000 more kilometres a week. And to do that, to get to 9,000 kilometres a week and to get your cents per kilo delivered to where you need to be, we need to load and unload our own trailers and give us the key to the gate so we can get in and out on weekends. And we'll put 3 drivers in a B train and we'll run it 24/7. And that's exactly what we did. But we thought about it from the customer's perspective as being a logistician and providing a solution, as opposed to we're just a truck carrier and here's the rate per mile and we'll do one load at a time. Much more different. And I'm pretty sure that's what Damon's thinking about when he gets to that.
Damon's right, though.
Yeah, more sustainable.
Right? Absolutely. He's right. Like this is if there's two sentences or one sentence that handles everything we're talking about, this is it.
It's brilliant.
To help shippers stabilize rates
Right.
and keep carriers in business long term. And you know what? All you brokers, there's money in it for you. Don't worry about it. It's a multi-trillion, like triple-digit trillion-dollar industry. There's a piece of the pie for you. Quit being so scarce and have the scarcity mindset. Like this is what it is, because when these fluctuations happen and carriers go out of business and then things start kicking in again and people are like, oh my God, I'm going to get a trucking company. I'm going to buy trucks. Now they're a year out.
Right.
So they're not buying them. And if they're buying them on a used market, they're super inflated.
Right.
Like we see it everywhere. We see it everywhere. But just like, come on.
And the best advice, I had some great advice in property market when I lived in Australia. And the advice was always leave something in it for the next person. So, we always have this mindset of let's maximize the sale price and just, screw everyone down on the buy price. And what I found was if you try to time the market on the buy and the sell side, more often than not, it doesn't work out for you. But if you always leave a little bit in it for the next person to provide some value for them to buy or sell, over time, it really works out for you. So that's what I would just say, but think about the next person.
Throw Ryan's up there, because so what people aren't seeing as well is that all small carriers are getting bought out by the big guys. When we help small guys, everyone wins.
Yeah, exactly.
I think even bigger than that, Ryan, it's the big brokerages too. Let's just call it out. The big brokerages are the guys.
Spade a spade. Hit it, DJ.
Okay?
8 Mile that shit right now.
They are destroying everything. With their non-competes, locking these guys in and using this funnel of let's just get new guys in to beat these customers up. You got the shippers who are the list shippers who are making these brokers think that the name of the game is just keep dropping your price. Whoever can get the lowest price wins. Right. That is not how this game wins. That's not how this game is played. Everybody has to win. Everybody has to win. But it's the big guys. That's the problem.
We've lit a few fires this morning.
Sounds like yes, exactly. Thank you, Ryan.
Sounds like a 3-letter brokerage. We never said that, kind of. Interesting. Okay, Dean, thank you so much. You know what? I just I've been wanting to say something for a while, and for you being here every Wednesday is such an honor for DJ and I to have the conversations. Before we started on air, for everyone watching and listening, one of the big takeaways for me is when Dean said, hey guys, why don't we start doing every Wednesday? And what we're going to see is this collection of data that tells a story. And we really hope y'all are seeing that story. Because I'll tell you one thing, now more than ever, we are starting to see things we talked about a month or two ago, where Dean, the master of data in this industry, says, pay attention to this. 2 months later, all these articles are coming out about it. So this is your place to be for firsthand knowledge months before the market. But again, DJ, how many times did we talk about this, brother? It's the application of the information that matters. So apply the information you learn here. If you don't understand it, get a hold of DJ and I. We can walk you through it. Get a hold of Dean. We can walk you through it. Dean, sorry, Dean, I didn't mean to throw you out there, because now a lot of people are going to get a hold of you.
We will get a hold of Dean for you.
Yes. Yeah. So just one more thing, because Damon's got a very valid point here. Brokers win by providing shippers with steady, reliable carriers that remain consistent. The regular service helps to provide that reliability and stability of service to their customers. It can become a great partnership, but greed always ruins it.
Always.
And here's the thing. Why would you want to ruin something over long term, right? Like, again, if we go back to brokers, your image, credibility, and brand matters. And if you are putting your image, your credibility, and your brand on a carrier's service, because that's all we have, the people we bring into our world, the people we hire to do the A, B, C, D, E, F, G job. If those people, you're trying to screw them over, or you're allowing greed to take over, how long do you think it is before your image, credibility, and brand gets blown out of the water? And then you know what's going to happen? This person didn't do this, and this person. No, you did it to yourself. That's the reality of it.
Well, Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that about the every week. So Dean, I don't know if you guys even remember this, but this was 5 months ago. I found the report, but from Greg Abbott, I had mentioned it on our show 5-6 months ago. Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, was saying, he was blasting it all over LinkedIn. Ports of Texas are open. Ports of Texas are open. Come to Texas. Come to Texas. This is 5-6 months ago. He is saying this.
Here we
He's
are.
telling everybody, come to Texas. So
Yeah.
clearly, guys, this gives us an idea of how long that transition might take. But it's also, this is, just paying attention to the data. And that's why, Dean, thank you for all of your amazing knowledge.
Great to be here with you guys.
We're honored, Dean. We're honored to have you here each week. You know, you're at the TIA. You take the time out to be here to share this information with everybody, and it just, God bless you, my friend.
Amazing. So yes, amazing. Thank you, everybody. Triple D, 5SK. Is that Chad? I think that was Chad.
That's
right?
Chad. Yeah, that's Chad. Yeah.
Chad, what's up? Yep. Triple D, guys. Wednesday.
Actually, Wednesday,
that's pretty
cool.
I
just got it.
Scientist of logistics data.
So slow.
You got us here. Monday
Take
through
us out of here,
Friday, 9
DJ.
a.m. till 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you again, Daman. Thank you for all the feedback live here. That really helped. And thank you for your sponsorship, American Logistics, Centurion Trucking. Reach out to Daman. People before profits. That's what this is all about. And here, this is great. Actually, it kind of led to this. So you cannot go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. So let's change the ending, guys. Let's do it together.
Let's go get
That's actually the way this whole conversation turned at the end. That's a perfect quote, DJ. Yeah. Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversation,